Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the cleaning up and tidying up the American US electoral rolls in each state and each district and so on. Now, this is a fairly big issue, especially given in the 2020 election where there was so much widespread electoral fraud, and only going in one way, of course. But nonetheless, this idea of tidying up the electoral rolls, who's got the right, who is a legal voter in an election or any election for that matter. But in this case, the election coming up in a few days' time. I had a look at all the legal cases that are running now. There seems to be a surprising number of legal cases, some of them quite small. Affecting, say, a few thousand voters. Say in one case, I think there was like 2,000 voters that were affected, and then looking at one where there are between 5 and 10,000 voters affected, and there were others where 200 odd thousand illegal voters are on the voter rolls. Now, when you've got a large number of illegal voters, dead people who've moved out of state, illegal aliens, it doesn't matter, whichever shape or size they come in. When you've got a large number of those, the latitude for fraud is immense because you've got all these people that don't exist. And so what happens is that nefarious actors, of which there are many in the US now, given the globalist control of so much of the Western world, they can use those non-existent voters and then put fake votes or ghost votes, phantom votes into the election. So out of, say, there's 200,000 non-existent illegal alien or whatever voters there, they just cook up these votes, cook them up in a back room somewhere as postal votes, and then they post them in, and hey presto, you've got your election win there. So cleaning up the electoral rolls is something you would think electoral probity is something that's important to everybody. Everybody would want electoral probity, surely, but that's not how it works now. The days of where everybody, both the parties and all the officials were heavily invested in electoral probity. It is the choice of the people. The people must decide, and this sort of thing. That's for a lot of people, it's long gone. And I see this in Australia, even this idea that even if the 2020 presidential election was rigged and fixed, even if it was, that is completely acceptable as long as we have a pro-globalist president or pro-globalist politicians in power. That's all that matters. And if we got to rig and fix the election, then so be it. And that's the attitude of many people here, including, by the way, people getting paid $1 million a year in the public service and the elite barristers, elite lawyers and judges. They many of them think that way as well. Excuse me. Which seems remarkable, but there you go. Now, there's been a whole lot of legal cases in the US, and typically it's where a local government or a local governor or a state government wants to clean up and tidy up the electoral rolls to take, say, illegal aliens off it, or to make sure that dead people and people that, say, have moved interstate or for any reason, just bring it up to current. So it's a completely clean, high standard, tidied up electoral roll. What's wrong with that? You think everybody would want that, but that's not how it works. So I've looked at all these cases, and for some reason, the Democrats, whether it be at the state level, if they lose that at the federal level, how the Democrats are determined, using lawfare, to take all these cases to court. So any attempt to clean up the electoral roll, the Democrats instantly are launching legal action. And there's a lot of these cases around. Again, in some instances, I don't think that the number of voters, the voting pattern of that state it's quite clearly going to be Republican or quite clearly going to be Democrat. So in some of those cases, I don't think it'll really make any difference. But it would set a precedent for cleaning up the electoral rolls, which the Democrats clearly don't want, or the globalists. So when I say Democrats, what I mean is the globalists, because they're completely controlled by the globalists. All their policies are globalist mandated policies. So there's instant lawfare to stop the electoral rolls and getting cleaned up for whatever the reason, whether it's illegal aliens or anything else. They just don't want these electoral rolls cleaned up, because then the latitude and the opportunity for fraud is substantially reduced when you've got a clean, up-to-date electoral roll, a voting roll. So I had to look at these cases, and there's quite a lot around. But I noticed something odd, that the Democrats are winning 3 out of every 4 cases. There was just a few minutes ago, there was the Supreme Court stepped in, I think, in the state of Virginia. Governor Glenn Youngkin there was trying to do some stuff, but so they've stepped in to ensure that can still happen. But the idea that just to clean up the electoral roll will be challenged in court, then it goes to a district court, then it goes to a federal court, a court of appeal, and then the Supreme Court, just to have a tidied, up-to-date electoral roll, that voting roll, that seems astonishing. Why would anyone oppose it? But yet, there you go. It's being opposed every step of the way. So if any politician, state governor, or anyone else tries to clean up the electoral rolls, they will instantly have a barrage of lawfare. But this, what surprised me, and I hadn't really thought about this, was how the Democrats are winning again 3 out of every 4 cases, and they're winning the bigger ones as well. In one state, there's something like 200,000 illegal voters on the roll. And this is a state where I would argue, at least, there's been widespread electoral fraud, particularly over the last 10 years. And it would seem to me that those 200,000 illegal folks registered to vote have allowed, again, that widespread fraud through use of postal ballots and so on. And that looks like it's the Democrats have won that. So I had to look at the cases, and the Democrats are winning most of the cases. And so how is that possible? How would any judge or any court support the idea of mass illegal voter registration? I mean, who would support it in the world? But if you look at it from a point of view of we have to stop Orange Man or something, you look at, and that's very much perspective here. Again, there's a lot of people out there in senior levels in the law and government and so on, public service, who say it's quite okay to rig an election to fix it. It's all right. As long as our guy wins, we don't care. If the other side wins, then it's not legitimate. But if we win through the massive fraud, then that's still okay, because we should be in charge. No one else is allowed to be. Only we are allowed to be in charge, and so on. So this is it's kind of a crazy time. I don't think anyone. When I was doing civics class in high school, I never imagined this sort of scenario would even be remotely possible. It was something that only happened in banana republics and in communist society, that sort of thing. It would never happen in the West. But yet here we are. And it's astonishing. Sometimes I don't even believe it myself that it's happening, but it is. So coming to grips with that. So I've had a look at the judges. Now, why are they able to win so many cases? This is the bit that sort of surprises me. And I've noticed that nearly all the cases, in fact, I would think all the cases that the Democrats are winning, they somehow manage to get the case heard by a radical judge. I'm looking at one judge here. She's a lesbian, a non-Gentile, and she has her entire history, Biden appointed, her entire history of, legal history is working for NGOs and pro-abortion groups and, all this sort of stuff. And so she decides, in fact, and using sort of somehow by taking illegal aliens off the voter rolls, you're denying them their human rights. They have a right to be a human being, and you're denying it. And very much an attitude that you see in the activism from that group of people, originating from the Levant. But this is, how does it end up in such an activist judge? If you look at the judges in that district, there's maybe 30% of them are radical activists. The other, there'd be some that probably would have been in the middle, and some that would have, be constitutional type judges. But somehow, in each instance, as this case moves through the lawfare chain, you're going from local court, district court, appeals court, federal court, Supreme Court, all the way through. The Democrats are able to get an activist judge appointed to hear the case every step of the way. How do they do that? How's that even possible? Why are there people not screaming about this? And then when it gets to the Supreme Court, only then will it get stopped. So this is how they're winning. They're able to create these bogus lawfare cases that have no merit, but they're able to make sure that they are only heard, these cases, to prevent the voter rolls from being cleaned up. They're only heard by activist judges. And I mean rabid activists. We're not talking about a judge that may have a bit of sympathy or something like that. We're talking people who are firmly in the camp of illegals must be allowed to vote and so on and so forth, and are able to produce findings that have the most obscure technicalities associated with them that aren't even relevant to the case. So I'm convinced that the Justice Department and these judges are acting in cahoots. They're conspiring. So, okay, we'll do this action. We'll say this. You then say that in your judgment. We'll make sure that you're selected to hear the case. You then produce a judgment that says this. That will then stop that. And so they're looking at it in a big picture format. So these conspiracies are running, I would argue, all through the process. So their determination is to stop the voter rolls from being cleaned up. I'm not sure that per se they give a shit about the voters, but they want to ensure that there is no precedent for tidying up the voter rolls. And if they can prevent these precedents from, legal precedents from being in effect, then they've got open slather to corrupt and prevent any proper oversight and levels of probity in the electoral process, which is, of course, what they want. Their stunning success in 2020 has showed them the power of being able to corrupt an election, so that if ever another Donald Trump comes along, they'll have the means to prevent them from ever winning and make sure that only the globalist flunky stooge dirty need little candidate wins. But so this is it. But when you look at the amount of times the Democrats are winning and the amount of times that they're able to get activist judges to hear the case, and not just one activist judge, at the first tier, the local court, that they can get an activist judge there. Then at the appeals court, another activist judge. Then at the federal court, another activist judge, and so on. So there's obviously grand conspiracy here to prevent the voter rolls from being tidied up and to prevent illegal aliens from being taken off the rolls and so on. And this is quite astonishing. Again, you never would have imagined we'd be in this situation where the government is actively engaging in lawfare to prevent election probity and election integrity. But there you go. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.